My name's Danica Marlin. I'm the Community Engagement Specialist at Mesa Arts Center and have been serving as the project designer and lead on the One Street Over Neighborhood Connection project. This project, it's unique because we've been able to unify four important principles to create something meaningful with the community. And these principles are reciprocity, first and foremost, relationship to place, self-determination is third, and this is key because it's allowing actually for community to be at the helm. And the fourth, and my favorite, is celebration. And we've been able to really celebrate throughout this project. So we began first working with Mesa Public Schools to secure the mural wall. If we didn't have the wall, we wouldn't have been able to complete the final aspect of the project, which was a 2,000 square foot mural designed by our lead artist, Miguel. At the same time, we were also in Whitman Elementary and Kerr Center for Agriscience, working with teaching artists to talk about identity, group identity, and how we make decisions together, asking overall, what are the points of pride here, and how can we help to amplify these points, starting first with the youth. From there, we were in the park. We were hosting community gatherings or platicas, and these were led by Rail CDC and in collaboration with Miguel to explore identity collectively with residents. All of these components, the in-school programming, the conversations in the park, and more creative projects hosted by our mobile art-based engagement lab, Mabel, came together to create this dynamic backdrop from which Miguel could design a mural with this space in mind.
Hello, my name is Miguel Angel Godoy. I'm an art professor, a community-based muralist, and a designer. I'm also the artist in residence on the One Street Over project with the Mesa Arts Center. In this project, I was able to utilize some of my own studio practice, which is text-based art. I look at letter forms and the spaces between letter forms, which are called counterforms. And my idea is that the intention and the meaning behind words live within these spaces. My process for including community on community-engaged public art projects is first to listen. And with this project, fortunately, we had a series of events where we were there to learn and to listen to what the community wanted to see.
I'm Augie Gastelum, Interim Executive Director at Rail CDC. So Rail CDC really participated in the One Street Over project, working with neighbors. A part of our role was to bring people together, convene people in what we call platicas, and really with the intention of just like coming together, having conversations, getting intentional about the vision for the neighborhood moving forward. We started talking about, asking questions about what makes them feel at home, what makes them feel connected to their neighborhood. And the purpose for those questions was really leading to the final platica, which was a walking audit. And in that walking audit, we took all the information that people, kind of brought up throughout the series of platicas and walked around the neighborhood for people to then make notes and identify, how are the streets going to be safer for us in the future? What are the things that I want to see as I look around that make me feel connected? Is it art? Is it murals? And also thinking about the comfort of the place. There were people that came, meeting after meeting after meeting, and that were a part of the walking audit, that by the end, they were more connected. They were having conversations about their lives, about their neighborhood in ways that they hadn't before. And that is really like the beginnings of building more resilient places.
The midway and final events were celebratory in nature. The core focus of these final events was celebration, was uplifting and focusing on taking stock of the health and wealth of this community and celebrating it together. The midway event provided a space also for Miguel to bring his design and ask for open and honest feedback, which is so rare to have those moments of invitation for people to see an artwork and actually be able to have a voice in what comes of it.
So my homework was to figure out what common themes were coming out and what common images, symbols were going to come out and how we were going to play this out. One of the things that was standing out the most was this idea of inclusion on the initial design. And so I decided then to interpret these words that were on the mural in Spanish and in Pipash. A lot of people wanted to see more Native American inspiration in the mural. Salt River Pima Maricopa Indian Reservation is adjacent to the park. It's so close, and so it only made sense. So the first word is dream, which is also interpreted in Pipash as schmuck. The second word is aspire, which is translated in Spanish, aspirar. The third word is learn, which is translated in Pipash as well, which is ukayak. And then the last word is love, which is translated into amor in Spanish. And then in between all these images are the symbols and images that represent these themes and also represent all the images and symbols that the community wanted to see in the mural. The other part of the design process was designing these pole banners. They were designed in a papel picado aesthetic. The most beautiful part of this project to me is the amount of time and effort that people continued to come and show up and donate their time. Because on all the projects that I facilitated, that doesn't happen very often. Knowing that there were families involved, people that actually showed up and that they were reflected in the work, that's how, for me, that was a testament to know that I did my job.
One of my favorite things about these sorts of engagements and activities is really seeing the people in the neighborhood, like the talent in the neighborhood begin to surface. We started finding artists in the neighborhood that identify as an artist, but really haven't done work in a public space like this. There's people that have, small businesses that they run their business, but they really don't see how it connects within their neighborhood. And beginning to identify those people and build relationships with those people becomes so important in the long term of community work in a neighborhood. Not just people building relationships with people in the neighborhood, but us as organizations and with the city, with the Mesa Arts Center, building those relationships with people in the neighborhood.
This project would not be possible if it weren't for the funding by the National Endowment for the Arts, first and foremost. And then we've had some super phenomenal partners along the way. Rail CDC were responsible for making sure everything was bilingually accessible, which is really important for this project, where we were in a neighborhood which has a large Spanish-only population. So they actually walked the neighborhood, they went door to door and built relationships with the residents. Also, Mesa Public Schools wouldn't have been able to have such impact without being in schools with the youth, with the residents and the kids that live there. Would not have been able to do it without Parks and Recreation and City of Mesa's different departments coming together to provide and add to the core concept of the project. And finally, we had additional partners come to the table solely because they believed in the vision that we were creating together with community. ASU Center for Sustainability, ASU Center for Informal STEM Learning were out consistently with us, also with bilingually accessible programming, also with a focus on the future.
This work is, in my mind, it's super, super important. And the reason it matters is because these are neighborhoods that are traditionally in the lower income demographic. It's a high percent of Latino or minority populations. It's a high percent of renter-occupied spaces. And these are places that are beginning to see more and more investment. And as all of that happens and comes together, you begin to see people being displaced from their neighborhood, not being able to afford to live in their neighborhood. And as those investments happen, they're usually happening to people in the neighborhood. And so this process of working with neighbors, kind of making all of those interconnections within the neighborhood, it begins to put the people in the driver's seat of the planning process. As they get more engaged in this process and they begin to see themselves as the leaders of this work, they get rooted in their place. If we do that, we will have a more successful city as a whole. And the more and more we do that, the more neighborhoods we do this in, the stronger our the fabric of our community will be.
I'm really blown away by what we were able to accomplish in such a short amount of time. And you know, the products, which are phenomenal and beautiful and will last into the future, are super important representations of this time. But what really, really lasts is the connections with neighbors, the connections with families, and the memories that are shared in that space that can be reflected on into the future.